Welcome, everyone, and we like to thank you for coming here with us this evening. I'm going to introduce you to uh, Camille Moore, who is the president of BLSA, the Black Law Students Association, and she's going to introduce our moderator. We thank you for being here, and I am Andrea Jordan Fields, the Black Community Initiative Coordinator, and we're partnering with the Black Law Students Association. And so welcome, and Camille.
Let's make sure everybody can hear me, right? Hello and welcome to this amazing Black History celebration. My name is Camille Moore. I'm a second-year law student and the president of the Black Law Student Association. I'd first and foremost want to thank DU Bolsa, Brownstein, the ACLU of Colorado, Denver Law Review, and Black Community Initiatives for helping bring this together. This event was brought to you all because of my aunt, Cheryl Marie. It's gonna be hard to say her name. Cheryl Marie Johnson Canete, who passed away in November of 2021. I'm gonna keep it together, y'all. But I know people are uncertain about that Canete part. She didn't know how to pronounce her married name either. So that was my effort. This event was due to all three of these women who have each set the stage for me to be here. You'll hear from Carlotta Walls Lanier, Deborah Richardson, and Janet Buckner. Each of these is my why. Our moderator tonight is LaQuania L. I'll get to this. And then she was born in Frankfurt, Germany, into a large military family. LaQuania was raised in Columbia, South Carolina, and received a bachelor's in communications, media studies from the College of Charlottesville in Charleston, South Carolina. After law school, LaQuania moved to Colorado to serve as the Deputy State Public Defender in the Golden Trial Office. Following her time as a public defender, LaQuania switched gears and began working with small and mid-sized firms in civil litigation, primarily with plaintiff side employment discrimination litigation. LaQuania has successfully litigated employment discrimination cases at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals to increase the access of justice for litigants protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. LaQuania is now the co-owner of Baker Oliver Simpson Law, a criminal defense law firm primarily working with indigent defendants. Additionally, LaQuania is a visiting professor at DU in the externships office, helping focus on private firm externships. Currently, LaQuania serves as the vice president and president-elect of the Sam Care Bar Association, as well as a member of the First Judicial Bar Association Board of Trustees. LaQuania is a proud member of the Aurora graduate chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Society, Incorporated. Everybody, welcome LaQuania L. Baker.
Thank you. I think it takes a minute for this to start connecting. Thank you so much, Camille. So it is with great pleasure that I get to introduce Carlotta Walls Lanier. Miss Carlotta Walls Lanier made history as the youngest member of the Little Rock Nine in Arkansas, the 9 African-American students who desegregated Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957. She is an inductee into the National Women's Hall of Fame and the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame. Miss Walls Lanier is also a recipient of the Congressional Gold Medal, the Spingarn Medal, and the Lincoln Leadership Prize. Carlotta Walls Lanier remains an avid advocate and activist in Colorado. She serves many organizations, including the Colorado AIDS Project, the Jack and Jill of America, the Urban League, and the NAACP. She is also the former president of the Little Rock Nine Foundation, which is a scholarship foundation that is dedicated to ensuring equal access to education for children of color. Carlotta was also on the Board of Trustees, and maybe currently still is on the Board of Trustees of both the Iliff School of Theology and the University of Northern Colorado. Ms. Walls Lanier, along with all of the other members of the Little Rock Nine, received the Pierre Marquette Discovery Award. Other recipients of this award include Bishop Tutu, Mother Teresa, and the astronauts from the Apollo 11. We are honored to have this esteemed guest here today to help us celebrate Black history and Black women. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And again, I'd just like to say, I spoke to this group not too long ago. And it was interesting that they would ask me back. So thank you very much for this opportunity. What I really liked was when I noticed the theme being the past and then the future and about black women. And I stay busy between MLK Day through the month of February, through the month of March, being, Women's History Month. And this committee was astute enough to combine it all. And I say that because, women have played such a big part in change in America, and black women in particular, which I get to the end of this, but, women have been behind big changes, as I said before. Even, if you think about President Wilson, it was his mother and the 19th Amendment, You think about Eleanor Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt, and those things that had taken place. The Mamie Clark to Kenneth Clark, Vivian Buster Marshall, and Constance Baker Motley to Thurgood Marshall. So, a lot of things took place to help these men help pass certain laws. That's all I'm saying. And I think it's great that when we can combine some of this together so that people will understand that it's just not a separate entity. So that's just one of the things that I thought about when I saw the title of the theme.
Well, I think it's interesting that you're saying that you're so busy in the month of February, right? And then also in Women's History Month. But I'm curious what the rest of the year looks like for you, because as you said, black women are instrumental in change, and that changes year round.
That's true. There are other things that are going on. There's no question about it. I've had to explain to schools and so forth that, you don't wait until February to ask people to come and speak on Black history, because Black history is a part of American history. And it is the same way with our anniversary is in September, but as far as integrating Little Rock Central High School, but that can be discussed any time of the year. And fortunately, I was able to get that across to a couple of school districts, and so I get it, November, or I quit at Thanksgiving, though, to be honest with you. But then, during the spring and early summer and so forth. I've had quite a few, with the pandemic, we've been able to understand that we need to be flexible. Yeah. And with that, Zooms are much more common now than ever before. And actually, that has helped a great deal, to be honest with you. So I'm still doing some of that, but actually, I'm a real estate broker, so anyway, that's
Well,
where
you
it is.
mentioned sort of the integration in Arkansas. And if you look back sort of on your journey and also that integration, who would you say, or maybe what would you say was most instrumental in your journey so far?
Well, my upbringing really was the foundation of all of that. Growing up in a Jim Crow environment, you lived a certain way, but that didn't say that that was the way it was to be. And fortunately, I had parents who told me that change was going to take place, and that I needed to be prepared to go through the door, whether it was a crack in the door or swung wide open. So be prepared. What do you mean? what I really want to say is that what they valued was education. And I needed to get all the education and the best education available. So that's all I heard from cradle on. And even though I had to sit at the back of the bus or had to buy my ticket at the theater and then go around to the back and go up the rickety steps to the balcony to the theater, or could not use the public library in Little Rock. I could only go to the zoo on a certain day of the week, as if the animals could tell the difference of the color of my skin. So, you know, that was the way that was Jim Crow South, okay? And so, but the message that I got was that change was going to take place. In fact, I had to let President Obama know that his little slogan, I'd been hearing that since I was a kid. So, you know, that's kind of how it was.
And so I know just as you're walking through those doors, you're just thinking change needs to take place. Were you thinking at all that it was going to have the lasting impact that it's had?
No. The change, I was not thinking that through the halls. I knew I had a right to be there. See, this is, you know, the story really is that Brown versus Board of Education opened up doors for us, okay, in many ways, not just education, but all of the other things that have helped to open up those doors came from Brown versus Board of Education. And that's why I mentioned Mamie Clark and mentioned Buster, you know, Marshall and Constance Baker Motley, because of the work that they did to help Thurgood Marshall and Jack and all the other guys in front of the Supreme Court justices. So when that took place, and it was a unanimous decision, which is very, very key, in fact, helped me to understand when there's been another unanimous decision. So those sort of things, and growing up in the Jim Crow South, the other piece was that you learn to stay within the law. So here is a law that the Supreme Court decision that segregated schools were unconstitutional. So, you know, I knew I was right because the Supreme Court said I was right. And the Little Rock School Board agreed immediately that very next day and said, but they needed to put a plan in place. So that plan was the little kicker, because, and I'm sure as law students here, you do know that there was a Brown versus Board of Education #2, and that was the one that helped the Jim Crow South take its time in integrating the schools.
So were you or your family or the families of all the students, were you a part of that planning process of what that day is going to look like?
No, we had no.
So you just showed up.
No,
Knowing you were right.
We didn't have any piece of the plan. The plan by the school board was to build 2 new high schools. One on the east side of town where predominantly black people lived, one on the west side of town, which was more white, although I lived west along with other black people, but that was an area that middle class and upper white families lived, so they put a school there. And that's why it took from 1954 to 1957, and they integrated only 1 high school. Now let me tell you, at the age of 13, I recognize the fact that, you know, if you're going to integrate just 1 school, I mean, 1 level of school, why don't you integrate elementary school kids?
Yeah.
If you're not going to do the whole system. So, but I also come from an era that you speak when spoken to, okay? So, but we listened a lot. All right, we didn't challenge adults.
Okay.
in their statements. Today, that's different. But my era, that's how we grew up.
So I'm curious what an average day then at Central would have looked like for you guys.
An average day was, protecting yourself, okay? Even though, that first year we had the 101st Airborne as guards.
The whole
But-
year, the whole school year.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
101st, along with the Arkansas National Guard that had been federalized after the governor had called them out to keep us out. So one day you keeping me out, and the next day you're supposed to be protecting me.
Right, right.
Yeah. Anyway, so even with that, an adult had to see what was happening to you. So it got to the point where I just didn't report things, okay, because too much red tape to get someone, to be responsible for their actions. So that day, walking through the halls, being spat upon, called names, I do my best not to think about the negatives, but those are the things that took place. Walking on the back of my heels, my socks were always bloodied. One time, a couple of times, the books were knocked out, and you learn how to make sure that your behind was to the wall and not to the hall opening, because you get kicked. And being pushed down steps and that sort of thing. Anything that any young person could think about doing to terrorize another person was done. They broke into our lockers. So I ended up just walking around all day with all my books and homework, because if my homework was in there and they took it out, then there I was without. And that happened to all of us. I mean, what I will say is that there are 9 stories, none greater or lesser than the other. We all have a different story. We all have something that has stayed with us much longer than most.
And just looking back on that experience and sort of what you're describing to us, if you could go back and do it again, would you do it again?
Yes. Now, I used to say if I didn't have family, because the real heroes and sheroes are really the parents and your family. But no, yeah, I would do it again. It was the right thing to do. I knew I was right. And, my father, I saw a clip where my father was talking to some reporter had come up to him, and we were not the type of family that our parents weren't the type to even want to talk to reporters and so forth. And but when my home was bombed, I think that was when this clip was done. And he made the comment that, no one was separating his tax dollars. They weren't black tax dollars and white tax dollars. All of those tax dollars were for Little Rock School District, not all, but that percentage.
Sure.
So, and that Brown versus Board of Education had given me that right, and I was within the law. So what's the problem?
And you said this interview was done possibly as a result of your house being bombed.
Yeah, I think that's where I saw that.
And was that while you were a student
While I was a senior
at Central?
at Central. Not the first year, but the last year. I started out as a sophomore. Schools were closed during my junior year, and then I went back in the senior year after the federal courts deemed the lawsuit that the governor had dropped, was not constitutional, open up the schools. But it took a year to do that.
How did that, I mean, it's a wonder you've made it this far and you completed your education having to go through all of that.
Oh, well, the other piece is that, people will ask me, well, what did you do when the schools were closed? And what I did is that I took correspondence courses from the University of Arkansas. And then that spring, I had finished all that they would allow me to take, okay? And that spring, a board member of the NAACP had offered his home to any student that, wanted to come, and this was in Cleveland, Ohio. And it's a big backstory to all of this, because there were a lot of students who left Little Rock, went to Connecticut, went to Pennsylvania, went to California, went to a lot of places. But the Little Rock Nine was not being asked to do that. Well, it comes to the point where, and you as a law professor and so forth, students, know that you might have to go to court, and they wanted us to stay there. Well, we were staying, those of us who did stay, because others did leave of the 9.
Yeah.
There were 5 juniors who were now seniors. Well, heck, they wanted to graduate, right? And schools are closed. So 2 went to California. One family moved to California. One went to the northern part of California and lived with a white family. They had finished high school. Where did the others go? But anyway, I remained, okay, and I took correspondence courses because I'm a junior. But once the federal courts opened up the schools again, a year later, it took them a long year there was a lot of litigation going on. So I returned, and Jefferson Thomas, the 2 of us were the youngest. Well, it was 3 of us that were sophomores who started out. But Gloria's father sent her to Kansas City to finish, to live with the relatives and finish high school. And so it was Jefferson and I who went back as seniors. And then there were 3 other black kids that decided to come to Central. So it was 5 of us in the year of 59, 60.
Okay. And I know you mentioned that your siblings actually went to, I think one of them went to East, right?
Both did.
Okay.
Both graduated from East High School.
Okay.
Here.
So at what point did your family relocate to Colorado?
I left Michigan. I went to Michigan State University, and after 2.5 years, well, actually between my freshman year and sophomore year, my uncle, who had been one of the drivers in Little Rock in the carpool, really didn't want his kids to grow up and be exposed to that sort of thing. And I'd like to, and so he moved his family out here in 1959, 58 or 59. So when I'm in college, I'm getting these letters from them saying, the sun is shining I can play golf 360 days out of the year. And, telling me how great it was and to come visit. So between my freshman and sophomore year, I visited here. And it was my utopia. For me, okay, I even went up to, it shocked me. I was in downtown Denver, and it was very busy, for this city. And I was a little lost, how things are downtown, and I was looking for a certain building. And I turned and asked this policeman on the corner where such and, where, and he gave me the direction, and I got halfway there, and I thought to myself, I never would have asked a policeman in Little Rock, Arkansas. So that in itself told me, that it seemed free, if you understand what I'm saying. So I left Michigan State after my sophomore year, and I visited my parents who had moved from Little Rock in my freshman year. I had been in Michigan State for a month, and I got a letter saying we are now living in Kansas City, Missouri. I mean, talking about change. But anyway, and I felt guilty. You see, I felt my family was really being hurt because of what I was doing or had done, okay? And I lived with that for a long time. So I'm getting this letter, and I'm thinking, I had two young sisters, one who was like 4 or 5 years old, and the other one was 12. And they didn't get the attention that because of me during that time. And so anyway, I came out here when I left Michigan State, I went to Kansas City and to visit my family, and my trunk stayed packed. And my father noticed that. And he said, well, isn't it time for you to go back to Michigan? And I said, well, I'm not going back to Michigan. Well, what do you plan to do? Because, I came from that era again that you were either in school or you were working or you were married. And I said, well, I'm going to go to Denver. Uncle Byron said that I could come out and live with them, and I will finish school, is what I said. So they got on the phone and made sure that that was what had been said, okay? And I took a bus out here, a Greyhound bus, and I read the book Exodus all the way out here. Let me tell you, that bus stopped at every little hamlet along the way. And haven't been on a Greyhound bus since. That was a long ride. But anyway, that's how I got here. And then they came out to visit me that Thanksgiving, and my father recognized that, yes, it did snow here, but he could work. And he came back in January and lived with me, and he moved the family out here that summer of 63, 64, I think it was. And then my sisters went to Smith. One went to Smith Elementary School, and the other one went to Smiley. And they both graduated from East High School.
And did you see a similar sort of movement happening in Colorado as you were seeing in Arkansas, or was it
Oh,
completely
no,
different?
it was altogether different.
Okay.
Even though, busing came along after I had, that piece came about after I had finished college up at Greeley. But the Keys, who I knew at the time, and I knew, Mrs. Knoll, all of that, was a part of this community. As I stated before, you find a way to get around some of that sort of thing. And my middle sister was at East High School when all the busing started, but my youngest sister wanted to go to Hill Middle School. So I just got an apartment over in that area and had that address and made it work.
Yeah.
So, and then she went to East High School and graduated from there. So yeah, and I was always being asked, how you feel about busing. Well, if it's a means to an end, as long as that end is to integrate the schools, then this is what we will have to do for a while. But I didn't expect it to last as long as it did, okay? So that was where I was at that time in my life.
Okay.
I worked for the YWCA during those days.
And so just looking to today, and some of the parallels that I think we've seen, everything with George Floyd and sort of the reawakening that's happened in
Right.
that time afterwards. Do you have any advice or suggestions for how we kind of keep that momentum coming off the heels of all the protests and everything that
Well,
happened in 2020?
is saddened to me is that we are back to that sort of lifestyle. And as I have told the young kids that I speak to in high schools and so forth, you know, Trayvon Martin was my Emmett Till, okay? Those sort of things, and I don't know, and I think about the kids at Parkland High School in Florida, how they rallied and spoke up. That emboldened me. It really made me feel good that they were able to go through that tragedy and still be able to go out there and speak about it.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't speak about it of the 9. There were always adults in front of us who did the speaking. So now I'm seeing young people, you know, voicing they do have a voice, and they're using their voice. And what did make me feel good in all of that horror of the murder of George Floyd is how the world gathered and spoke out against what took place, which takes me back to 1957, because our story was the second biggest story in the world as well. So here we are, you know, 60 years later, and this circle is happening again.
Right.
But I see young people being able to speak up and be heard, and they need to be encouraged even more to do so. So, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to take you new law students out here to do some of that. You know, again, the past, I think about the attorneys that I met, okay, and how passionate they were about doing the work that they were doing, and weren't getting paid that much, okay? And I'm all for you going into corporate firms and tax attorneys and all of that makes me feel good to see that we have gone from just representing a divorce or what have you to these other, you know, other levels. But at the same time, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and ACLU and Planned Parenthood and all of those organizations are in need of lawyers. But you have to have a passion for it. And if you don't have a passion, don't bother. That's my take. I had the opportunity to meet Brian Stevenson. If you read his book, you understand exactly what he was all about. And he's not a rah-rah kind of guy. He's just a person who's out there doing good work for the right reason.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue, and I think we can bring up our other two guests. We're gonna slide down. We're gonna keep you. Thank you. And so our first additional guest to bring to the stage in a lovely pink suit today is Senator. Right. We're playing with Jada Pinkett's red tabletop. We got red chairs, so she can't come for us. But we first have Senator Janet Buckner. Senator Buckner is a Colorado State Senator. Ms. Buckner was unanimously elected by a vacancy committee in July of 2015 to serve the remainder of the term of her late husband, John W. Buckner. She represents House District 40 in Southern Aurora. Senator Buckner is a member of the Health and the Insurance Committee, as well as the Education Committees. Ms. Buckner, or Senator Buckner, was reelected to serve the people of House District 40 in 2016 and again in 2018. Following her 2018 victory, she was appointed to the leadership role of Speaker Pro Tem by the Colorado House Speaker, Casey Becker. In 2019 legislative session, Senator Buckner sponsored and passed the historic Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, ensuring that women are compensated equitably for their work. She was also a co-prime sponsor of the Crown Act that passed in 2019. She is dedicated to legislation that addresses health and education inequities, and she has proven to be a leader in the state legislature by passing laws to address these issues in a bipartisan manner. Senator Buckner has always believed in giving all individuals having a seat at the table regarding policy or legislation issues. She is dedicated to leading by example with grace, inclusivity, and empathy. Thank you so much for being here. And before we get into our red chair talk, we are going to also bring up Deborah Richardson. Ms. Richardson has more than 3 decades of experience in transformative nonprofit executive leadership in global, national, and local organizations. She's working to advance civil and human rights for non-dominant identity groups throughout Colorado and throughout the nation. Deborah is a nationally recognized expert and advocate in advancing justice for women and their families and convening cross-cultural community-based coalitions working to advance equitable societies. Her passion is mentoring the next generation of social justice advocates. Ms. Richardson currently serves as the executive director of the ACLU in Colorado. And let me ask, are you the first Black director? Oh, well, we are so thankful to have you. So thank you all so much for being here. I think you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, that we are, throughout history, we've seen Black women just be instrumental in change. And I think we are seeing a little bit more of that as we move into a potential new Supreme Court appointee by President Biden. But as we continue to celebrate, do you have any ideas or advice for students or faculty or anyone at the university of how we can sort of keep that momentum going, and how can we continue to put Black women to the forefront to be leaders?
Well, I can start with that, even though I'm not an attorney. I think it's very, and you said this very well, Coletta, you have to have this passion. You have to know what the purpose is, why you're in this special place at this special time, and then set a goal for yourself, that I'm going to be a trailblazer, I'm going to get there, and keep that North Star going. I talk to a lot of students, and a lot of them have a short-term goal. Oh, I just want to graduate, I want to get a job. But what is the difference you want to make in the world for 10 years from now? So I think we're having that intentionality in place, and then being engaged and speaking up. Black women are marginalized in so many ways. The data shows that we have to have more education, more experience, than even a Black man. And so as Black women, we also need to support each other and help us get each other to that finish line. So that's my initial thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So well said. You have to have that passion. The way I ended up in politics was not your usual route, because my husband passed away while he was in office. So by statute, that replacement has to be gotten through a vacancy committee. And here I was grieving and trying to figure out how I was going to make it. This was when we were going to be traveling and just having a great time, and he passed away unexpectedly. So by statute, I had to be replaced within a vacancy had to be filled within a certain length of time. So when everybody was calling me saying, you've got all the leadership skills that you would need to be a state rep. And all I thought about was just, spending time with my grandkids and traveling. But when I saw who wanted to take my husband's place, when I looked at the people who wanted to be interviewed for that vacancy, I thought, no, no. One lady changed her political party so she could run for this seat. It had to be a Democratic seat. Another woman just wanted to be a state rep. And then there was a older gentleman who said, "Oh, I think that'll just be fun." And I thought, my husband was so dedicated. He was a high school principal. A lot of you know him. He was principal at Overland High School most of his career in Cherry Creek schools. And he was asked to run for office, and he was the first Democrat who won a legislative seat out in Aurora. So my husband went to the state capitol, and he was chair of education. And I was a former educator. My husband was also all about lifting anyone up that he could, and also about inspiring people to do what they never thought they could do. So I knew that's what I wanted to do as well. So I accepted the vacancy, and I've never turned back, because it's given me so much purpose in my life. I had purpose before, but I even have more purpose now. And I think to go into public office, like you said, Deborah, you have to have that passion and dedication. State representatives and senators only make $40,000 a year. That's not very much money. You know, you can keep your other side job, but during session, you have to be dedicated to being a legislator. And you have to want to make a difference. You can't just want to do this because you want the title senator or state rep. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just Janet. That title does not impress me, because I have work to do. And that's what I do at the state capitol. I try to encompass as many people as I can. I try to let them know that they can do this job. You know, there's a lot of sacrifices, but you can do this job. And there aren't that many of us, but we all work as a team, and we work across the aisle, and we just do everything we can to uplift what we need to uplift and make a difference in legislation for everybody. I never thought I would be doing this, but it's probably the biggest blessing I could have had. And working with people, like, I was so excited when Deborah came to town, because she has the same goals and just that desire to make a difference. And hopefully someone in this room, I can mentor you. I love it. I love to mentor people, and just let you know realistically how you can get to be a senator or a state rep if you want to.
That's wonderful.
I don't even know if I answered the question, but
Well, that was a great introduction. How many Black state representatives and senators do we have in Colorado?
well, believe it or not, we have one of the highest percentages.
Oh,
We have 8.
oh, wow.
8. However, we have 3 in the Senate, three Black senators, and in the House, we had 5. But one of them, Dominique Jackson, Representative Dominique Jackson, was just appointed by Biden to be the regional director for HUD.
Oh,
Yes, isn't that nice? Yes,
That is
it just
awesome.
happened. It
Yeah.
literally just happened. So she was able to take her platform, which was housing, and she was homeless at one time. So she can really talk the talk and walk the walk. And so we have 8. Well, now we're down to 7. So they had to fill her position with a vacancy, and ended up that a nice lady was chosen to take her position. And I'm sure she, I think she'll do a good job, but I was hoping that we could fill that spot with another, a Black woman, but it didn't happen. But we have 8, like I said, which is one of the highest percentages in the state. And think about that, Colorado. Yeah, that's really saying a lot.
yeah, because I think Colorado's, 4% Black, I think?
Yeah, 4%.
Overall, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were 30,000, is this on? No.
There you go.
There were 30,000 Black people when I came to Denver in
30,000.
1962.
Oh, wow.
60,000 in the state. So,
Right.
hey, I think we're doing pretty good.
We're doing pretty good.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because coming here from Atlanta, I
Right.
was really stunned at how the large percentage of Black representation.
Right.
We had 2 Black mayors of Denver,
Right.
the largest percentage in the Senate and House. It's pretty remarkable.
It is remarkable.
I think that's interesting, because I moved here from South Carolina 6 years ago, and I was stunned in the opposite direction. That I didn't think about it, sort of like you said, if you have a passion, you just have to kind of be called to it to be a deputy state public defender, and I knew they had one of the best systems, you know, in the country, and I was shell-shocked when I got here by the lack of diversity, but I started to see it in other places, and I joined the Aurora chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the best chapter.
Yes, me too.
I think I saw an
me
eye
too.
roll on the other side of the stage. And so I think I was able to, easier than I thought, able to make that community. But as we're talking about community, I'm interested to hear your all thoughts on what our community, the Black community, needs most in Colorado and what we should be focusing our passion on the most right now.
I have one, and I know the others too as well, and that is voter engagement. The last election back in November had the highest percentage of voters who did not vote, and we're getting ready to go into a critical midterm. We cannot allow that trend to continue. We have got to be present and encourage people and each other to go to vote so that we can continue the progress that we're making in the state.
And I'm curious from you as well.
You hit the nail on the head with that one. I just think we need to just all be more engaged in what's really going on in the political arena, because if we're not engaged, we don't really know what everyone wants. And as a senator, I am so open to my constituents to have them let me know what they need, because I'm serving them. And we have to have people who will go out and vote. And then we have to have those who are willing to just work the polls or knock on doors or whatever you have to do to make sure that we get the right people elected. And just think this last election, we were so excited because we had, you know, the first Black woman to be on the ballot for higher office as vice president. So that drove a lot of people. But I don't know if we'll have that same excitement this election, and I'm worried. I'm worried.
I'm worried as well. And the vote is so important. I spoke here at DU probably about 25, 30 years ago, and I brought my yearbook, and also I brought a poll tax for them to see what it meant about voting. And my mother sold poll taxes, and I was a kid sitting right there as she sold these for $2. And as I tried to explain and did explain to my children, one complaining about the long line, okay? And they made the statement, this is why we don't want to come in. I said, but too many people have died for this right. And this is a right that we all have. And I think we need to say this more. We need to demonstrate this more. And I agree with you as far as helping those get to the polls. I know I drove over on the west side of town and were picking up people to take them to go and vote when Wellington Webb was running for office. Those sort of things, you have to find what you are good at. Not all of us can do the same thing, okay? So you find what that is and do that. And that's your giving back to the community, as I see it. But the other piece still to me is education. If you do not have what bothers me is when I hear that the percentage, especially of Black students not graduating from high school, it just unnerves me. It really does. And it's very important to do that and then move into that next level. It does not have to be college. It can be a community college. It can be industrial schooling, or doing nothing but tech, whatever. But we need all of the education possible. Two things are being left out of the curriculums that is really upsetting me, and that is history and civics. And if you don't have it, you don't understand who you are, whose you are, and where you're going. So we need that sort of thing. So we need to speak up about that. And and you're sitting in, you go into city council meetings and you're paying your taxes every year, you have a right to say what is on your mind. Like I said, I came along when I couldn't speak, but we can speak now.
You know, I heard Stacey Abrams once told me that an elected official is the only position where those citizens vote, so therefore they are accountable to us, but we never check in on them and tell them what we want or to tell them what we don't like about what they're doing. We just let them have free reign until the next election. And so you're right, that is a serious issue.
And I'm wondering too, I mean, you all have been first in positions in your own respect for a lot of things, and I think for a while we're going to see a number of Black women who are still being the first of something. I would love to hear some of the challenges that you did not expect to face being the first in some of those positions or assuming a role when you're sort of called to service. So I'd love to hear about some of those challenges and how you found the grit to sort of face those.
Yes, I grew up in southern Indiana. During very racist times. You know, we had sundown towns where the next town over, you couldn't go unless it was daylight. You couldn't go after dark. I was the first one to do many things in my hometown. And the reason I took the charge was because my mother encouraged me to do that. She said, somebody's got to be the leader. Somebody has to be the first in everything. So I felt like I was the first in many areas, but I was always willing to take the hand of someone else and help them be the first or the second or the third. Yeah. But it's not easy. You just have to be up to the challenge. You have to be willing to take criticism. You have to be willing to, especially as a Black woman, to accept a lot of hate. A lot of hate. You have to accept a lot of criticism because sometimes I can be doing the best job ever, but I'm still criticized. And so I just have to know in myself that I'm doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
You would not ask some of the things you're asking of me from someone who is not Black or who is not Latina or who is not straight or whatever. You know, it's just so frustrating. But the first is not a bad place to be. And I like being the first in many areas because I can mentor so many people. Yeah. But it's not without its challenges. It really isn't. And I just feel like as Black women, we are held to such a different standard. I've got so many things I could say. But for example, I remember I was the first woman to be a national trainer with Johnson & Johnson. And my manager, we went out to dinner, and my mother had always told me how to sit at the table. You know, you don't put your hands on the table, keep your hands in your lap. And he had the nerve to tell me during dinner that he didn't like the way I was sitting.
Oh, no.
And I said, excuse me?
Right.
And he told me that I should be sitting with my, I should be sitting at the table with my hands in this position, you know, well, let's see, I don't know what you call it. There's this position where it's supposed to show power when you're speaking, and I said, well, you know, I was never taught that because that's not powerful to me. But it's just that type of thing, always being held to a different position. Or some people probably don't like it because I wore this suit to the state capitol today.
Yeah.
They might prefer that I was in black. But just always being criticized and being first has those challenges. But I think that everyone needs to be able to realize that it doesn't matter what anybody else wants, it's what you want.
Yeah.
And if you want to be the first one, be the first one. We have our first transgender representative, and we just happen to have the same birthday, February the 10th, this Thursday. And we talked about being the first. And some of the challenges she's gone through are so much worse than mine. And we talked about how you just have to step out there on faith, just use your confidence and go on.
And
I
then-
was so happy to hear your story in person because I've heard it. Because you and the Little Rock Nine really paved the way because you were the first southern city to do that. Atlanta didn't integrate its public schools until 1961. And my parents volunteered me to be the second round to go through the school. And so, and you all know, in our black communities were real communities. Children were protected, they were revered, everyone was out for your own welfare. We didn't lock our doors, our neighbors. I mean, it was just such a wonderful place to be, a great cocoon. And then, like you, thrown into this environment where people did not want me. And I would come home every day crying, and my mother would look at me and say, Deborah, this is not about you. This is about something bigger to you, as you said. And that is the mantra, I think, that so many of us first, we realize that we are here because the successes we have paved the way for more successes for you. So we take it very seriously.
Oh, Deborah. You know, thank you for saying that because I met Carlotta. Well, see, we moved here in 1975, and my husband and I met Carlotta and her family not long after we moved here. And we used to have these conversations about what happened, being a part of the Little Rock. And I remember when you really couldn't talk about it. And I thought, wow, yeah, I understand that.
No, it was, for 30 years I didn't talk about
Right.
it. So
Right.
I do know during that time, and John used to ask, I would come to Overland High School.
Right.
He was one that really tried to pull it out of me, and it did help.
Yes.
What really helped was writing my book. And once I got it down, then I was okay. But when I first started doing this after the 30th anniversary, I would have flashbacks, and that I could not continue to talk about it. In fact, I'll never forget being up in Thornton High School, and I had to step out. I started crying because I remembered the chief of police that Saturday morning seeing the newspaper where he was dead and his wife. And he was one who had tried to help us. And they claimed it was a double suicide, but we knew differently. We knew that they had been murdered. And so that flashback came back to me after 30 some odd years. And so that's why I had pushed everything to the recesses of my mind. And that is a burden of being first. And not that we were looking to do that or looking to have all the accolades that have happened since. We did it because it was the right thing to do. At least for me, that was the thing. And that's why I say that the real heroes and sheroes are really our parents. And your parents, your mother, sign you up, basically.
Exactly.
My mother didn't sign me up, or my father. In fact, they didn't know I had signed up until 4 months later. But it was because of how they raised me. And so I knew what I was supposed to do. So that's kind of how it happened. It's going to be wonderful, I think, down the line when we won't have to say the first. But, I won't live to see that, so anyway.
Well, I think it's interesting you talk about that burden because, like I said, I'm from South Carolina. I went to the College of Charleston, and the College of Charleston famously decided to fight South Carolina's mandate of desegregation, and so it forced the entire university to go private so that it wouldn't have to do so. So much so that they lost all their funding, they couldn't stay open, and so in 1964, the College of Charleston decided to go back private and allow African American students to go there. I started going there in 2009 when there were 300 black students, so we were only 3% of the campus, and even in 2009, we were still seeing nooses in the Black Student Union's like sort of campus area. We were still seeing a lot of backlash about Obama, who was just being inaugurated, all of that. And so it's interesting because you still lessened our burden, right? We still didn't have to go through a lot of what we had to go through. And we were thankful that we didn't have to be the first, but we were still kind of seeing some of that residual. So we're still thankful for you and that you lessened some of that burden. And I'm curious what we can do, just sort of asking all of you as coming up Black attorneys and Black law students, what we can do to sort of impact this movement and support you all in the movement that you're still forging ahead. What can we do to help you all?
I can think of a lot of things. What can you do to help? I know, I just wish everyone would just stay more engaged in what's really going on, except, in your communities and in the city. Just stay engaged. And I think the other thing I would love to see is at the state capitol, we just don't see very many people of color coming to the state capitol. That's the people's house. I mean, you can come down there to sit in committees, which is really fascinating. You can come to testify in committees, and you can even testify remotely.
Yep.
And we just don't see enough people of color coming to testify on particular bills. And you may have an expertise in education, you may have an expertise in real estate, you may have an expertise in HR, and there are so many bills that we run and we just try to find people to come to testify either for a bill or against a bill. And it's really easy, I can teach you what to say, how to say it, but I would love to see more of us at the state capitol. And I always offer this, if you want to come down and shadow me for a day, it is fascinating to see the wheels of justice. It really is fascinating. So I always encourage people to come down and shadow me, see what it's like at the capitol. Give your ideas to your legislators, because a lot of the bills we run and bills that are passed come from the general community. There is this young kid, you probably all heard of him. He decided that he needed to run a bill because he was running a lemonade stand in his neighborhood, and he got in trouble. So we had to pass a bill so all kids who want to run their business can run it for a certain length of time. I don't remember all the details of the bill, but we get our bill ideas from you. And I would just love to see more of you come down to the state capitol, make yourselves known, see what the process is like. And I think that's really, really important. And the other thing is, reach out to your legislators and give them your opinions, because sometimes we sponsor bills and we don't always understand some of the repercussions. And I was just listening to messages on my phone today, and boy, there were some people screaming about some bills I'm getting ready to run and fussing at me because I'm putting my name on a bill. That's okay, because I call those people back and say, what don't you like about it? How can I amend this? How can I make this better? Sometimes I like their ideas, sometimes I don't. But that is your right to reach out to us. And as law students, for example, when I ran equal pay for equal work, that was a huge bill. I had no idea, because I don't have a law background. I did not understand the ramifications of that bill. And boy, did I get an education. And I lucked out because many of you know who Charlotte Sweeney is, I think, here in town. She was just appointed by Biden to be a federal judge. And she was my go-to. And I would love for some of you to be my go-to, depending upon what the issue is. So there's a lot you can do.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I firmly believe that we're at a time that is our democracy is more endangered now than it's ever been. Now, during the time of the civil rights movement and all of that, it was just a group of 10 or 12 states, right, who were being crazy. But they were in the movement would not have progressed as way it did if there were not northern white allies who came and was part of that movement. But now we're seeing that we have separated ourselves in these ideologies without even wanting to hear what the other side has to say. You know, we can curate what we see on the news, we can curate what we look at on the internet, we pick the people around us who think just like us, and we're facing a crisis that if people like you who are engaged, people like you who have the wisdom and the brilliance and who care about the future of this country, this is your time to step up. I mean, the three of us on this stage, we've been all that we could be. But it's really, you all have got to step up. Don't, you know, John, you saw up there, Lewis, you know, he was 19 years old, you know, so now's the time to step up.
That's great.
And so if it's okay with you all, I would love to open it up to the audience just to see if anyone has any questions. And there is a podium here if anyone is brave enough to be the first to step right up and ask any questions you may have.
Nice to meet you all. My name is Ken Stable, and I'm a law student. Also running right now to be a state representative myself. So I first want to say thank you. You admitted under my stories, but I experienced a lot of homelessness when I grew up. And I went to around 17 different schools before I even got to high school. And when I was really struggling with that, it was the story of Little Rock 9 that really got me through it. My mom would share with me, because she's from Manhattan, she remembers seeing Malcolm X on a soapbox and seeing all these excellent leaders, and she would say, somebody fought and bled for you to go to school. And so I would really, really work hard, even though my circumstances did not want me to do it. So I want to say thank you for that, and I want to say thank you all for being leaders, because for young individuals like ourselves, it makes a big difference to see you. Something that I would like to just ask in terms of, as I proceed and go through this, something I really want to do is work to mentor and try to get younger generations up as well and raise them up as leaders. What kind of programs do you feel like we can start to really try to do that mentorship and have a pipeline to get into these positions of leadership, and not just in elected office, but other places and different positions like an executive director, and make a real change?
Hey, Ken, it's nice to meet you. We've been playing telephone tag. My schedule has been insane, but I will be sitting down with you really soon. Our young people really do need mentoring. So many of our kids just don't have the advantage of having what we call normal homes. So there are so many organizations that you can become a part of to help mentor kids. They used to have the Big Brother, Big Sister program, Boys and Girls Club, et cetera. I'm running a bill now where it's called Safer Streets, and we're going to try to, we're not going to try, we have millions of dollars in grant money for organizations. Well, there's one section for nonprofits to write up a proposal of what they can do to help young people, for example. So there are so many organizations out there that are mentoring youth that I don't even know about. It might be through your church, it might be through your neighborhood, but our kids really do need mentoring. And it's something that I think we lagged behind for many years with so many young people, because my husband was the prime example. When he was a high school principal, we used to have this conversation all the time about how so many kids just don't have anyone to talk to, no one to mentor them, no one to give them advice, no one to encourage them to go on to college. It's just remarkable to me that I think we've lost a couple of generations of kids that way. So I don't know what the exact answer is, Ken, but even if it's just one person or two people, I've met kids at the state capitol who have testified, and I've given them my card, and this just happened this week. We're running a bill that will allow, I'm getting off, I digress, I'm sorry. We're running a bill that would give every foster kid, because they're wards of the state, a free college education.
That's huge.
Isn't that huge?
That is huge.
It is huge. And when I heard the testimony, I cried. All of us were crying, because these kids had a story that was unbelievable, you know, going from foster home to foster home. And the one story that stands out to me the most is a young black lady who was a ward of the state in Texas. She moved here with her foster family, and she said she ended up with another foster family, but she ended up graduating from high school, graduating from college, and now she's working on her doctorate. And I said, how did you get the strength to do this? And she said, it was just people who heard my story and wanted to help me. So I gave her my card, and she reached out within 2 hours and said, thank you for saying that. She said, because I will mentor someone. So like I said, it doesn't have to be anything formal. It can be informal, just helping people.
Janet, you're so correct in saying that, because we came along where within the family,
Yeah.
you had people encouraging you to do certain things. And I do believe that the baton was dropped. And we did not continue to explain the history. When people start talking about me, I'm standing on shoulders. You know, I'm really standing on other shoulders, and I recognize that. But the young people today don't, or at least a certain generation didn't, and they didn't spend the time at the dinner table talking about these issues. You know, I knew, even though I went to a segregated elementary school, Negro History Week was huge, okay? And we knew all about where we came from, okay? Along with those whites that helped to build this country as well. That's why I say the civics and history has been taken out of school. That is very important for us to understand why we are here and what we are supposed to be doing. That is why democracy is being challenged now, because they don't understand. So you have a responsibility to help those, and you use the word mentor, and that is what it is to mentor other people to understand why they should be doing certain things. And it should not be a confrontational dialogue. It should be, you know, just a normal dialogue going on. And I think that would help move people from first base to second base, or second base to third base. So it's how you approach others and how you discuss these issues with others. And being a lawyer, and you have a way of, you know, honing your skills by talking to these people. And I think that would help in a lot of ways.
And before you ask your question, what House district are you running in? Is it
I
the
was
newly
just going to
formed?
say, if it was, I was just going to say, is it okay if we talk about that? Because I think it's
Yeah, I wanna
important.
hear about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Ken's running for state representative HD 37 because of redistricting. And we need to help him
Absolutely.
get elected.
Where's 37?
So it's south of here, it's actually in like Centennial, like a group of villages. Okay. So I'd be the first person to spike me that would run there.
But even if you can't vote for him,
Yeah.
you can do, when we really get into the election process a little bit further along before the election, you can make phone calls for him. You can write, we write postcards, and it really works. We write the postcards, and even if you don't have a ton of money, $10, $15, we'll buy stamps for him. So we need to support Ken, because we want to get that 8th spot filled down at the state capitol. So, and with your background, you're going to be amazing. You're going to bring so much to the table. You really are. We have one other black lawyer at the state capitol now, Jennifer Bacon.
Oh, yes.
And her theme was everything's better with bacon on it.
That is so true.
Isn't that true? But she has made a difference, because she looks at legislation differently than I do. And so we can use someone like Ken. So when we get closer to that election process, we have to all help Ken.
So I was just going to say,
Stable.
I come from a different background with regard when you asked your question. I mean, I think it's important in terms of when it comes to making programs available, really starting like in the school systems. I'm a social worker. I'm a professor in the Graduate School of Social Work, and I've been in the child welfare field for the last 25 years. And the school to prison pipeline is real.
Oh, yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, starting when they're very, very young is where it basically needs to happen. I mean, it's situations where small children, particularly African-American children, are being sent to the principal office for things that teachers could just take them out in the hallway and deal with it on. And so they start to build these complexes from very early on as small children. And then the peace officers were introduced into the school. So by the time kids are, African-American children are in middle school, they already have a juvenile record for things that could have been dealt with by just having a conversation with them. And so then a label starts to be placed, and then they grow up, and next thing you know, in their thought process, all they think about is, I'm bad. And so they think about, I'm bad, and their behavior starts to do just that. They start to commit crimes because of what's in their thought process. So the issues are from kids that are very, very, very young. So the programs need to happen there. Get police officers out of school, get peace officers out of the schools to really help. So those are where programs are needed, especially for African American and brown children, because again, they are having these problems and growing up with these issues, and it's a really sad process. And another thing that needs to change is the entire child welfare system.
Absolutely.
Black children and brown children are being taken from their parents that don't deserve that, and there's very few of us that are there hollering and screaming and saying, no, this child needs to stay with the parent, and you're overwritten by people that look like us. So anyhow, my work is going to be revamping the child welfare system in a number of different ways, and there isn't that many of us that's fighting for it. So I say let's social workers and lawyers partner together and make the change that's needed. So that's
Right.
just what I wanted to
That's
say.
real,
Well, before
real
you
passion.
sit down, what was your name?
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking
Well,
about.
on Thursday, as the senator was mentioning, there's a bill coming up. It's a juvenile criminal defense bill to limit or refine the interrogation practices used on juveniles, deceptive interrogation practices used on juveniles. And it really will help that school to prison pipeline. As we know, some kids will just say what they need to say to get out of trouble. They don't think about the ramifications. They don't think of, this is going to result in some type of conviction that's going to be in my history forever. They just think, I need to get out of the seat right now. And so I will be testifying on Thursday. You can do it remotely. I'm going to do it remotely because sometimes you get there at 1:30 and you get called at midnight. So you should most definitely be testifying.
Oh, you have to testify,
Yeah.
especially with your expertise
Right.
and your background. And like I said, you can do so remotely. So it's easy. You go online, you can go on the state website, and it tells you how to testify remotely.
And we're going to be supporting a bill that's going to be dropped called Raise the Floor, which means that any child younger than 12 years old will not go through the adjudication process. It would be for services. Because you're so right that these kids are really caught into this. I mean, an example. Last year, Senator Buckner helped us pass a bill that eliminated cash bail for juveniles. There was a 10-year-old in Douglas County who had autism, got into an argument with another kid over a pencil. The kid with autism was triggered. Police officer came in there, slammed the kid on the ground, handcuffed him, and he was kicking and screaming, threw him in the back of the police car, wanted to teach him a lesson, left him in there I don't even know how much time. The kid blooded himself, beating up against the iron gate. And when he got to detention, they called his parents. His parents showed up. They had a $25,000 cash bail. Now, that is how draconian this system is. And this is why you're absolutely right. We have really got to eliminate the school to prison pipeline. So I'm glad you brought it.
So glad you brought that up. School to prison pipeline was my bill last year. And a lot of you know what happened. We had to postpone it indefinitely because the conservative news channels took it and ran with it and lied about what the bill really was. And it was unfortunate that we had to pull the bill back, but we knew we couldn't win because even the Democrats were upset with some of the wording in the bill. I mean, we have to control the narrative. And we tried with that one, but because of the way things were last year, we weren't able to. And we know the school to prison pipeline is real. So we're hoping to start developing that bill and bring it back again next year because it needs a lot of work. It's really complicated. There were so many parts of that bill that were so technical, the legal parts of it, and that's what the right decided to use against us. For example, I will not say his name, but it's a very conservative talk show person here. He read part of the bill to say that a student could take a teacher down to the basement of the school, tie her up and rape her and not be charged. No. Now, we all know that that's not true. What we were trying to do was keep, there were so many parts of the bill that it was just too technical. So even teachers were mad at us and the principals were mad at us. But we all know that the black kids are the ones who are, and black and Latino kids are usually the ones who get into trouble and then they go through the juvenile justice system and it's wrong. So that will be coming back, but boy, I could use some work working on that bill because Leslie Herod and I ran it and you would not believe the death threats we got. I mean, credible death threats that we got because of that bill. But we're not going to stop. We're going to keep working on it and just approach the bill differently next time.
Good.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you ladies all so much. It looks like we have one more question, and that will be our last.
That's
Yes.
actually a perfect segue into my
Yes.
question. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Linnea, and good to see you again, Senator Buckner.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for being here today. And my question is more of a personal question. You're dealing with an incredible amount of criticism, stress, burden, all of that on our collective behalf. And I'm curious, what do you do for self-care? How do you manage that? What do you do? We all need those lessons about how to
It's a good
take care of
question.
ourselves better, because our health obviously is impacted by this. So I would be curious to hear what you do for yourselves.
That's a great
So,
question.
Senator Buckner, I'm going to say I really am interested in hearing your response because I have seen her 4 times since last Monday.
Yes.
I've seen her in person. I've seen her on Zoom. I mean, just how are you doing that? How are you taking care of yourself?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. That, self-care is so important. And I pray a lot. I pray about everything. When I get frustrated, I have this little saying, it's on my phone. It talks about when you're anxious, it means you need to calm yourself down and pray. So that's what I do. I also think that I just take time out for myself. I get massages every 2 weeks. I talk to my kids a lot and my grandkids. And I have I don't have I know a lot of people, but as far as my really close friends, I call them and text them. But I just stay centered because our jobs are just overwhelming. I don't know how you do it sometimes with what the ACLU has to put up with, but I just try to keep things in perspective. And I just know there's just a certain amount I can do, and I try to stop. This year is going to be tough because I'm running all these community safety bills, and they're huge. And I'm also running a bill for a new Department of Education, for a new Department of Early Childhood. But when the governor reached out to me for some of these bills because he knows my passion and he knows I'll get it done, but he also knows I'll do it right. But I just pace myself, but it's not easy. I know Deborah and I were texting and she said, how do you do it? And I just cut everything off at a certain time in the evening and know that I will get it done. And I've even had bills that I've asked them to reschedule them if I don't feel like I'm ready, if it's too much pressure. So I think it's just knowing what my limits are.
And I think it also helps for us to get partners in that, say, listen, when you see me going over the edge, I need you to pull me back, et cetera. I'm fortunate my husband, Harry, is that person for me, but it can be anyone because someone has to, we lose perspective.
We do.
We're so in the middle of it, and there's someone to shake us up, like, okay, let's get back to reality. You need to stop. You need to go to bed. You need to, take a massage, That's really important.
But thank you, because there's this article, did I send it to you yet? I know I sent it to you. Deborah. It's about Black women and we're not Superman, Superwoman, and take the cape off. Yeah.
Do you have that? I'm going to send it to you.
Oh, you've got to have it.
Yeah, we're interested to hear about your self-care.
Yes, I want to hear self-care.
You mentioned your husband. It's my daughter that will recognize that I need to step back. See, I'm looking over my whole 79 years.
I didn't know you were 79.
Oh, yes. And
You want to use your mic?
I'm
Because
sorry.
there's quite a few people on Zoom.
I'm
Oh, I didn't
sorry.
know.
that's
I
right.
forgot.
Talking loud anyway, but anyway, I don't know how I really handle things other than, well, the last couple of years has been tough. I can go away, and that levels me out a little bit, but I really do believe in knowing who you are and what you can do. And I try not to get over in another lane. And once I start doing that, I need to, I have help in getting me back into my own lane. So it's, I have friends, but I have never been one who just gave it all to one or two people. You know what I mean? And so it's that faith and that prayer that you really do need to stay within. And I basically tell even the young people that for them to appreciate or to be able to do the things they want to do, they need to know who they really are. And they need to respect themselves. And see, I try to practice that, to know what I can and cannot do and have respect for myself. Because I can't expect you to respect me if I don't respect myself. So, I like massages, but I'm going to tell you where I really get my best is being at a jazz concert or on a jazz cruise or whatever. That is where I can truly relax now. So music is one thing that I thoroughly enjoy, and that helps me to get through some things. But this past couple of years been tough.
It has been, yeah.
But we've all learned how to adjust, I guess.
And I know my kids are listening, so I have to say this, but it's true. My grown kids also, they can tell when I've just about had it. They can tell by the tone of my voice and what we talk about when they call me. They say, oh no, you're in work mode, you need to stop. So my 3 kids really do keep me intact.
When I mentioned my daughter, actually both of my kids, they recognized I was on too many boards. And I was not that same person that they had grown up with. And really, it was really my daughter that really asked me to start backing off of them. And I did do that. In fact, I'm not on any boards now. So but I enjoyed the work. You want to see certain things take place. not that you need your name attached to it, but you want to know that
right.
it was accomplished. I like a particular goal and see the end of it. And then once it's done, I'm ready to go on to something else. I don't need to talk about it, you know? And you've been good about that. And I have seen so much, folks. So, you know, it's kind of hard for me to.
Well, whatever you do is working. It's fabulous. You're so fabulous.
It's
You really
it's
are.
fabulous. Well, thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here, and I think there's so many folks who are probably going to want to follow up with you all and reach out for some mentorship. I don't know if you guys have cards. I'm sure we can talk to Dr. Jordan Fields to make sure we can get in touch with you all as well, but thank you so much for being here.
And I just want to make a plug, just like I'm the first African-American to lead the ACLU, we've never had a black attorney either in 70 years. So I'm depending on some of you all to step up.
Yes. And another plug, we also have a book drive. The Aurora chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated started a book drive for MLK Day, and it was so successful that it's been extended throughout Black History Month. If you step up on your way out and use the QR code, you have to get a little close, or contact one of us, Dr. Jordan Fields or myself, and we can give you the link as well. There are a number of books you can choose from. You can also select your own books. There was a focus on Black authors, Black stories, children's books, a whole host of things. And then also throughout the month, we are going to have a number of Black History Month events at the campus. On February 17th, we have our next event. I thought there was one on the 16th as well. There's one on the 10th as well. But I believe there is a flyer from BALSA that includes all of the Black History Month events. You can also go to the new Sam Carey website, which has all of the Black History Month events from CBA, DBA, BALSA for CU and DU. Also contact someone from CBA. John Olafson is in the room as well from CBA, who also can help you find out who was instrumental in making sure that we were all orchestrating some of those Black History Month events. So thank you all so much for being here, and thank you all so much for being here as well. Yeah, thank you guys. It was great to meet you.